Hello, and welcome to today's presentation on searching research databases. We'll start our discussion by talking about how to select databases by type. Then we'll discuss how to use Boolean operators to construct a search, as well as learning how to use proper punctuation to make a search successful. We'll also spend some time building a couple of searches that we'll use in later videos to search PubMed and Embase. Let's open with a reminder that not all databases are built the same or used for the same purposes. They all have different strengths and different reasons for you to use them. For example, point-of-care databases are meant to be used at the point of care, or in other words, in clinical settings. They provide summaries of evidence, usually in bulleted or outlined format. Examples we've talked about already in this series are LexiDrug, DailyMed, and Drugs at FDA. There are also reference databases. These are adaptations of reference materials that only serve highly specific purposes. And the best examples here that we've talked about previously are the FDA Orange Book and Purple Book, which deal with the niche topics of therapeutic equivalence and biosimilarity, respectively. And both are even still published in print form as reference books. Next, we have bibliographic databases, and these are some of the most common ones you're probably familiar with. And these encompass databases like PubMed. They're collections of published materials like articles, book chapters, journals, and dissertations. A subset of bibliographic databases are bibliometric databases, and they're essentially bibliographic databases that have some element of citation analysis built into them. And examples of these include Web of Science and Scopus. And if you're a student and not focusing on research, they're really not something you have to worry about at all, except for maybe how they function as bibliographic databases if you're interested in learning how to search Web of Science to find journal articles. Today, our focus is on bibliographic databases, and in particular, how to build searches that will function in both PubMed and Embase. Key points to remember about bibliographic databases are that they return citation information and links to published materials, and we're often talking about peer-reviewed materials and often primary literature, so actual journal articles, actual research, and actual clinical studies. It's also good to remember that these databases are absolutely massive, and we're talking tens of million citations, so the search algorithms are much more complex than any database that we've covered previously in this series. It takes more skill to learn how to search them effectively. And that might seem daunting, but it's still much better to use them than Google because all the content within these databases have been indexed by content experts. So you're getting higher quality materials that are only topical, they're only on biomedicine, and they have been vetted to some degree. The key to building any search in any bibliographic database is Boolean operators. There really are three, and, or, and not, but we are only going to focus on and or today. Put it simply, or expands results and limits results. So if I search dog or cat, I get everything about dogs, everything about cats, and everything that mentions both dogs and cats. So in this Venn diagram, I get everything in both circles and where the circles overlap as well. If I search dog and cat, however, I only get what's in this little center part that the arrow is pointing to, because I am saying the search has to return only results that mention dogs and cats together. So everything to the outside that only mentions dogs or only mentions cats is automatically excluded. So it limits the results. So to start building a search, you need to identify the concepts you want to search and start linking your similar terms together with or. You always start with or. So in this case, if I'm interested in Advil and whether someone who is at high risk for heart attack or cardiac arrest should be taking Advil or the impacts of it, then I would be looking for terms related to Advil or ibuprofen, because they are related terms, or cardiac arrest, or heart attack. It's also important to remember that you always capitalize your Boolean operators when you search, so your database recognizes that they are in fact Boolean operators. So that is why the or is in all caps. And if you look in the next part, why the and is also in caps, because the next part of what we do is we take our or strings, our two concepts that we have linked with or, we put parentheses around them, and quite simply, we stick and in the middle of it. So now we have Advil or ibuprofen and cardiac arrest or heart attack. And this is really the very baseline search that you would create for a database. But you can't stop here. Punctuation is a really, really important part of searching in these databases. Running a search in a database like PubMed is really like low-level coding, and there's a lot of ways that you can fine-tune your search and make it so much better if you just pay attention to little things like punctuation, and it can make a world of difference. In this case, there's 3 things I always want you to remember in every single search you do. 1, always check your parentheses. In this case, it's very simple. We just have 2 concepts and we are just linking them with and once, so there's just parentheses around them. But if you are linking 2 or more terms together with or, there should always be parentheses around them. And just check to make sure that your parentheses are correct. After you do that, then it's important that you put quotes around phrases of 2 or more words. In PubMed, that means putting double quotes around them. In Embase, that means a single straight quote, but we will get into that more when we go into the videos on those specific databases. In this case, we're going to be building searches as if they're in PubMed, so you can see that I've put double quotes around cardiac arrest and heart attack. What this does is it's telling the database that I want to search for cardiac arrest and heart attack as phrases. If I didn't do this, it would search for heart and attack as separate words in addition to heart attack as a phrase. And that would bring in a whole bunch of noise. So by putting quotes around it, I'm limiting it to just searching heart attack as a phrase, and that is much more nuanced and much more specific and exactly what I want it to do. Thirdly, it's important to add asterisks for truncation wherever it's appropriate. And what that means is that if I stick the asterisks at the end of cardiac arrest and the end of heart attack, it searches for cardiac arrests, plural, and heart attacks, plural. This is because truncation searches for any combination of the word or phrase that comes prior to the asterisk. So if I searched for PREGNAN asterisk, it would search for pregnant, pregnancy, pregnancies, etc. So it's a powerful tool with a lot of uses, but in many cases, like in this one, you are using it just simply to get plurals, and that's fine. And here at the bottom, under number 3, really is a very basic search that we could copy and put into PubMed right now, exactly as it is. Before we continue, I really want to hammer home the importance of synonyms. This really is the key to creating an effective search. Our language is varied, and there are just so many ways to describe concepts that really taking the time to think this through will in fact save you time later by creating a better, more thorough search up front. Even in cases where you don't think there are synonyms, there might be, and it really, I cannot stress how much it is worth the effort to take the time to think them through. And possibilities to keep in the back of your mind when you're coming up with synonyms are brand names versus generic names, acronyms plus, of course, the acronym spelled out, similar but not identical terms. An example of this could be hand washing and hand disinfection. They're similar concepts, but they're not identical. But more than anything, just don't be afraid to be creative, because you can always cut out terms that don't work later, that are bringing in junk, that are impacting your search in a way you don't like. It's easy just to erase them out. So it's better to come up with too much than too little, and find yourself scrambling later to come up with phrases when you come up with nothing. So to close, let's quickly go through what we've learned to build out a search from a very simple clinical question. And our question is drinking cranberry juice effective in preventing or treating UTI symptoms? So this is something a patient or someone could come in off the street and potentially ask you when you are a practicing pharmacist. So the first thing we are going to do is look at our question and say, what are the terms in this question that are the concepts that we are going to use in our search? In this case, I think it's pretty clear it's going to be cranberry juice and UTI. And of course, like I just said, synonyms are very important. And you might look at cranberry juice and think there are no synonyms for cranberry juice, when in fact, a fairly quick Google search came up with the two strains that are used in North America and Europe respectively to make supplements and make the juice. So this is a case where you might think there are no synonyms. There are in fact a couple. This might be a little further than you might go yourself, but I just want to make the point that there are always possibilities and they might surprise you. As for urinary tract infection, it's a lot more straightforward. UTI obviously stands for urinary tract infection, so we would be obligated to search both of those. And then urinary cystitis is another way to potentially say urinary tract infection. When I link my two different concepts with or, it looks like this. When I put parentheses around the or strings and connect them with and, it looks like this. And this is my baseline search, and now all I have to do is go through and add the punctuation. Right up front, the biggest change you might notice is that I took away the juice from cranberry juice and added truncation after the second R in cranberry. And this is so it searches cranberry, cranberries, and of course cranberry juice, cranberry extract, etc., as well. The omission you might notice here is that there's no asterisk next to UTI. And why is that? That is because you must have at least 4 letters before you can truncate a word in either PubMed or Embase. UTI is obviously only 3 letters, so it doesn't have enough, and so the database would either break if it was Embase and not search properly if I added it with an asterisk, or it would just ignore it and give me an error message if it was PubMed. So these are just the little things you learn along the way and the little nuances you pick up. But other than that, I've added my asterisks where they're appropriate. I've added my quotes. And we will use this search to search PubMed and Embase in future videos. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our video. If you have any questions for the UK Medical Center Library, please contact us at mclib@uky.edu. That's mclib@uky.edu.